What's up guys, it's the Hunter Project here. Welcome to my channel where you'll find Monster Hunter news, builds, playthroughs and everything in between. Monster Hunter Rise has released and the game has not disappointed. Be prepared for an influx of YouTube videos on this channel, and today, to start off that influx, I am bringing you my first video of this short mini-series that I'll be making where I go over the beginner tips for Monster Hunter Rise. And I don't know how many parts there will be, but as I get more and more tips, that even if you guys suggest any, I'll start building them up, and if I have enough, I'll make a sequel to this video and so on. Starting off with tip number 1, we have the canteen. In Monster Hunter, there is a mechanic where you're able to eat a meal before a hunt in order to get a boost to your stats and maybe an additional skill as well. And this can help you out a ton during the hunt, as you're able to have a bigger starting cap for stamina and health. Or health, I guess I should say, because depending on what you eat, it may give you both stamina and health as a boost, or maybe just health or just stamina. And you will have to experiment on what you can eat together to get a specific health or stamina boost. And with health especially, it can be very beneficial at early game, which of course is an area where health boosting items like max potions and ancient potions are quite non-existent. So having the extra health allows for a bigger threshold of taking damage before being forced to heal. And of course, extending on to what I said about the skills, there are a lot of skills that you can eat to gain temporarily for that one quest, and they can be very useful. One of them, for example, being Feline Slugger, whereas if you are a hammer user, you'll be able to knock out the monster a tiny bit easier using that skill, well, as long as you air for that skill. And yes, 100% definitely something that you should be doing is going to the canteen before every single quest. Next tip, we have the weapons. So to put this tip in a nutshell, play with most, if not all, weapon types, and then pick your favourite and get familiar with it. Each weapon will have its advantages and disadvantages, with some, for example, favouring speed like the dual blades, and others being slower but hitting like a truck when you do hit a monster, like weapons like the greatsword would be an example of that. Take the time to try each of these weapons and try find one that aligns with your desired playstyle, and I recommend trying to become a master of that specific given weapon, as I'd say every single weapon in Monster Hunter does have quite a steep learning curve when it gets to the professional way of using them. So I definitely recommend picking your favourite and trying to get extremely efficient with using it. And do note that some weapons may be harder to master than others, so if you are looking for a simpler weapon, I'd suggest weapons like the sword and shield, greatsword, lance, or the ranged weapons like the light bowgun or the bow. And more complex weapons can be mastered as a beginner, but it may give you a bit of a harder time. As expected, they are more complex, and these weapons would consist of weapons such as insect glaive and charge blade. And charge blade is definitely one that I can vouch for myself, as I am quite an active charge blade user. My main weapons, my go-to weapons are probably charge blade, longsword, greatsword. Greatsword probably being the weapon that I've used the longest, and it can be quite complex in a sense when you're trying to time your charged hits and being able to learn the monsters, like where you should be directing your swing depending on the monster's movements. But for the most part, it is a simpler playstyle compared to like the charge blade, where you're having to manage your files, making sure your shield's charged up, and if you like to use your sword, making sure your sword is charged up, and also just making sure that you're timing your super elemental discharges correctly, because of course it is quite a long animation, and Monster Hunter is a very game. It's a game where it's very crucial to time your hits, as monsters can be quite frantic in their movements, so it's definitely something to be aware of. The next tip is to make good use of quest surroundings. So endemic life has become an extremely useful factor in Monster Hunter Rise, and it's more than ever in the series that your surroundings and what you can pick up in your surroundings are extremely useful. And in Monster Hunter Rise, it offers the player the stat boosts such as defense up, attack up, and that's to name a few. And another very key useful one being the additional temporary wire bug upgrade that can be found around every map, and I think there's multiple across every map as well, so you don't have to always run a specific route. I think there's thinking about Shrine Ruins, I can already think of 2 spawn locations for the additional wire bug off the top of my head, so there are multiple areas you can grab them, and you definitely want to keep an eye out for these. And when you do discover one of the locations, Be sure to keep it noted, whether that's mentally or just writing it down on paper or into a Word document or something, as these spawn points are fixed, so try just remember where they are for future reference. Tip number 4 is to play slow, and this applies especially to those newer players who are hack and slashers. Most quests in Rise will offer you 50 minutes to complete, and this does not mean that you will require the whole 50 minutes due to the monster being like a damage sponge. It means that you have time to play it slow and study the monster. This means it gives you time to observe the battle, retreat and explore for healing items or buffs, like when we were talking about the endemic life, and you can even return to camp to restock, or even take your real life Palamute for a walk. 50 minutes is quite a long time, so you definitely have time to slow down and really think out your actions, whether that's during the actual combat or when you're away from combat. Remember, Monster Hunter is more like a turn-based game when it comes to combat. It's not actually a turn-based game, but you could think of it as one if you want to have a reliable playstyle. You don't want to trade attacks with the monster, as it's going to hit much harder than you, and you're just going to realise that, oh, I've already run out of all my healing items. So hunters will want to make it a habit of observing when the monster has an opening and aim to utilise that opening to damage the monster. This is something that you will get used to as you progress though, as you will find yourself not progressing too quickly and finding it quite difficult if you do not try adapt this playstyle to your own, and you definitely want to make this as natural as possible. And this does bring us to the end of this first tips video, guys, and as well as Rise video as well. This will be the first Rise video on the channel, which is pretty cool, excluding the unboxing of course. And if you did enjoy, be sure to smash the like, subscribe buttons, especially if you did learn something new. I'd be curious to know down below if any of you guys are new, so be sure to comment down below. If you are new to Monster Hunter and Monster Hunter Rise is your first game, be sure to comment down below. I would love to see who is joining the series with this fantastic entry. And also stay tuned for a lot more Monster Hunter Rise content, including part 2 of this tip series. So for any veterans who are watching this video, be sure to comment down below some extra tips, and I'll be sure to add that into the part 2 of this series. And don't forget to join our Discord, link is at the top of the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.